mbopartners.com or follow us at MBO Partners. Here at MBO Partners, we are a contractor engagement and compliance specialist and are the chosen compliance partner for a third of the Fortune 100. Our mission is to make it easier for large enterprises and top independent talent to work together. For more than 20 years, we have been leading the charge to keep the independent economy moving forward, building a unique dual-sided ecosystem featuring many of the world's most prominent companies and in-demand professionals. MBO has always been committed to advancing the next way of working, and we are far from done. We will continue to drive change on the ground, delivering innovative solutions that enable organizations and talent to thrive in a consistently evolving workplace. Check out our upcoming events at www.mbopartners.com/events. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's speaker, Dr. Simmie Adams. Dr. Adams has nearly 30 years of experience within the intelligence community and the Department of Defense environment as an intelligence professional, as well as a leader and mentor of both military and civilian professionals. He spent over 21 years in the U.S. Army's regular forces and special operations during peacetime and multiple combat tours. He was a senior intelligence analyst as a contractor, supporting combat commands in the Joint Special Operations Command in both domestic and overseas positions for 2 years. His experience has created a wealth of information to draw upon in the development, implementation, and measurement of performance-oriented business plans derived from strategic guidance. He personifies the one-team approach in helping organizations develop strategies, which includes business and communication plans aimed at supporting their workforces in effective transformations. Lastly, he has supported multiple intelligence agencies as an organizational performance-focused consultant for over 7 years. He has strong organizational performance and leadership abilities and has extensive experience in coaching, mentoring, and training personnel. Dr. Adams has strong communication skills as well as the ability to visualize issues, determine solutions, and implement decisions. He has led efforts in analyzing communications, conducting executive interviews, researching industry best practices, as well as examining project issues and risk to develop performance-driven strategies. He is a subject matter expert in organizational and leadership change methodology. This methodology has led efforts in analyzing communications, conducting executive interviews, researching industry best practices, as well as examining project issues and risks to develop communication strategies. As a result, he developed and implemented a strategic communication change program focusing on executive briefings, organizational internal and external communications initiatives, and organizational intranet informational websites. His 360-degree focus on organizational issues groomed his organic knowledge base in the operational and human capital environments at all levels. Dr. Adams, at this time, I will turn the presentation over to you.
All right, thank you. I was saying, wow, I'm awed by the participation that we have today. So thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your busy schedules to be part of this webinar. So, welcome again to Full Impact, Unleashing the Tiger. I am your host, Dr. Simmie Adams, and Full Impact works on a premise of 3 areas. One is, you're very successful with what you're doing, but you may be unsatisfied with your career. Go back up one, please. With your career, business, or life coach, and just realize there's some need for change. You may also be maybe unsatisfied with where you're at in your career, business, or life, and again, realize there's a need for change. And then the third premise is that you're just unsatisfied, you're feeling stuck, or becoming overwhelmed with issues, situations, challenges in your career, business, life, and you believe there's a need for change. The concept is the need for change as well. But no matter what the reason is why you're here today, we are here together today. And because time is a commodity that what's given, you can't give it back. And as I humorously say, unless Dr. Brown invents the flux capacitor, I just thank you for choosing to spend some time of your valuable time, more specifically, with me today. So let's get started. Let's get to the next slide. So if you would, we have quite a few people on the call today. And I would like to charge 3 or 4 people. We don't have time to go through everybody. I would love to do that. Do we have maybe 3 or 4 people who would like to introduce yourself so we can get a flavor of the type of businesses and people that we have on the call today, and answer these 3 questions? Give us your name, your industry you work in, what's going really good with your company, and what is one of your biggest challenges? Do we have any takers today?
I see where Sean Ong has chimed in via chat. He's working in VR and AR.
Okay. And what's going really good with your company, and what's one of your biggest challenges, Sean?
Sean says that lots of small contracting is coming in, but it's hard to fulfill all of the contracts. It's also hard finding bigger contracts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you so much. The first and most courageous for enlightening about your company and some of the things, the items that are going well, as some of the challenges. Part of what we want to do today is to maybe give you some tools, maybe not to address those specific questions, but to give you some tools as to how to embellish upon the growth and the strength of your company financially. And who's next?
I see where Lois Karpinski has chimed in. She's an M&A consultant. So mergers and acquisitions. Ken Schlechter works in financial services as a consultant.
And what's some of the
Oh, wow. We're getting quite a bit coming in, Simmie. Lara Nelson is an Agile coach and Scrum Master. We have someone signed in under AW who is a script analyst in the entertainment industry. And what's working best would be the professional. And the biggest challenge is gaining new customers.
Okay. Well, we're going to drill down into the customers, your clients, if you will. So I'm looking forward to some more engagement with you on that one. Maybe one more.
Sure. German Ibanez has chimed in. He's an energy consultant, and his biggest challenge is finding new contracts. I think we have a common theme, Simmie.
Okay. I think so. Okay, new contracts and how do you fill them? Part of the presentation pretty much giving the secret recipe. If it's it won't be secret after today, I suppose, but the recipe for creating a successful business. And then there's for those that stick all through the webinar, there's the magic sauce that will go through. So hopefully stick in and we'll move forward. So let's go ahead and get started here. I thank you, everybody, for chiming in and giving us a little insight on the type of companies we have, and looking forward to moving onward. All right, so imagine, if you will, we have a huge guttural roar of a tiger. So let's get started right now. So if we go on to the, so first let's go into what we're trying to focus on first. Now we're going to seek to obtain information. Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, and then from the understanding, let's make some decisions and how we move forward. We want to really have a concept of obtaining knowledge and inspiration leading to understandable and actionable information. That's the key to everything that I do. And secondly, from this information, what we want to do is unleash the tiger and really create a good, actionable goal that can be the catalyst for creating innovation, leading you to be able to create a data-based, solution-focused, action-oriented, data-driven plan. It all sort of flows together, if you will. So if we move forward. So here's the outcomes. This is I propose that will be the outcome of this particular webinar. Everyone's intelligent. You can read. The key is that every meeting, in this case a webinar, should have some type of outcome to be realized. And this is what our outcome is today. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide here. And to get those outcomes, you got to have an agenda. So this is what our agenda is going to be. Now, as we're talked about the recipe for a successful business, we're going to go through that step by step. And then, as I mentioned, you stick around toward the end, we got the secret ingredient that pulls it all together. So with that, let's go ahead and flow right on through and let's get going. Okay, so I'm now going, this is the disclosure of all things of how to grow a successful business. First, we got to have that market dominating position. We're going to go through really what that is. And I charge everybody to start thinking about what might be your market dominating position. I'm going to go through a definition, sort of review my own market dominating position, and I'd like to once more charge maybe 3 or 4 other people that we haven't heard from yet to provide their market dominating position based upon the understanding of what that is. And then we're going to go into what the ideal client is. We want to understand with clarity, who is your ideal client and customer? We're going to drill through that. And then what's their world like? What's the challenges they have? And we're going to drill through that. So without further ado, let's go on to the next slide. So market dominating position. A lot of people consider market dominating is just being out there. You put a shingle up and people will arrive. I suppose that's a technique. It doesn't usually happen very well, but what is a market dominating position? So here's 2 aspects of the market dominating position. So you want to have some level of value. So there's a little town close to me where I live at, and there is actually one dentist in the little town. And if we were to think about what this dentist's business is like, being the only one in there, she could really charge whatever amount that she wants to charge because she has a very unique position as being the only dentist in the neighborhood. But suppose I'm a dentist and I want to, I see that there's only one dentist in a town, and I think that this town is large enough to support 2 dentists. So I set up a shop, and now I'm a competitor of this once, single dentist town. So now the dentist has to come up. So why would someone want to come to my dentist practice as opposed to me being the competitor's dentist practice? So then you have to start thinking about, what is my market dominating position? What makes my dentist practice so much better than my competitors that when people think about dentists, then you want to get from dentist practice. So the concept is then that you have to have a market dominating position to say, what does one think about when they're thinking about dentists in this town, where they would want to come to me as opposed to my competitor. So think about my own market dominating position before we open it up, because I'd like to hear from everyone else, 3 or 4 people, about what they consider their market dominating position. And hopefully those people will allow me to ask some clarifying questions of their market dominating position to help build it up some. But it's also a way of lessons learned for those that are listening. So how might I develop my own market dominating position? So my own. So, obviously, they introduced me to Dr. Simmie Adams. So I have a doctoral degree in organizational psychology. I'm certified through the International Coaching Federation as a coach. I have a security clearance. So the majority of my client work is in the agencies that support security clearances. I met a coach one day She actually has a bachelor's degree in microbiology, and she calls herself I think a life strategist was the term, but she was a life coach. And I got thinking, so how does being a microbiologist support being a coach? I never, could contemplate that answer. So these are some of the my own market dominating position, that provides me when someone is thinking about it. They have they'll think of me as opposed to some other coach that's out there or some other organizational psychologist. I mean, throw in the books that I've got written. I mean, there's a lot of other activities, but they'll give you some general idea of what I mean by a market dominating position, because it's not a unique one. It's you're by yourself because there's a lot of competitors out there, but we want to ensure that when people think of organizational psychologist or a career business life coach, that they think of me as opposed to one of my competitors. I mean, there's a lot of coaches and organizational psychologists out there. So thinking about that, I would like to invite, I'd say, a couple of people just to present your market dominating position as you see it. And hopefully you will allow me to maybe ask some clarifying questions, not to challenge your market dominating position, but perhaps by asking the questions, maybe rhetorical, but by asking the questions, you can increase that market dominating position for you and your company. Who do we have out there who would like to take that step?
Who are chiming in via chat, if you are able, we'd be more than happy to unmute you for feedback. Simply use the raise hand feature because I see quite a few answers that are coming in. So from Alan Pruitt, he notes he is the only qualified independent economic development professional for the western region of his state.
Okay. So thinking about that, that goes along with being the uniqueness of that dentist example I put on. So being the only one, that's good. You have very limited competition there. So if you were to take that and say, well, if there were two or more people that are similar to you, what would make you stand out, be head and shoulders of your competitors?
It looks like we also have a raised hand that we'll jump to next after we hear back from Alan. So we will jump over to Shashi Sawhney next.
All right.
Matt, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and open that up to Shashi. Shashi, you are unmuted.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh,
Hello.
It looks like Shashi. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Right. So I just typed my question. I think that was earlier when you opened the forum for people to introduce and what are the challenges I currently face. So as I said, I have over 30 plus years experience in IT industry, and I'm especially an expert in implementing Oracle applications such as financials, projects, procurement, and those kind of things. And I have a lot of global experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
But currently I'm facing a lot of problem like challenges to, acquire some new contracts, works on that. I don't know whether it's all due to the current pandemic situation we are all going through or whatever. I have no work at all. And I'm happy to work on a lower rate, so things like that.
So
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good. But the key is you have a lot of experience. So the key is how do you win those contracts? So part of really developing your market dominating position in the form of your proposals, and will probably help drive you to, at least for consideration. I mean, there's a lot of other factors when you're looking at contract work, particularly with the government. You know, so with all the experience you have, which is good, the key is in how well are you selling it from a market dominated position within your proposals. So part of my response to that would be to explore the types of the wording in your proposals and how well is those words presenting your knowledge, your skills, your abilities, and experience so that you can win the contracts out there. So thank you so much for presenting that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Who's another one?
Matt,
You're welcome, sir.
Who we had started with has raised his hand. So let's jump over to Alan next. And from there, we'll go to Lara Nelson.
Alan.
Oh, hi, Dr. Adams. First, give a shout out to Emily. She is my first business manager almost 10 years ago at MBO. And I'm glad to see that we're both participating in such an incredible adventure this afternoon. So thanks, Emily, for sticking in there. And I think for me, stick with MBO myself. Dr. Adams, I want to get back to a question about, I guess, what is my differentiator? Was that what you were looking for in the part B of the question?
Yeah, the key is, sir, so the key element is the differentiator is more than just being unique. It's more of when someone thinks of you, your industry, your company, or what you do for a living, how will they look at you first as opposed to one of your competitors? The key to market domination is a lot of people think of it as being just a unique qualities, but what puts you head and shoulders? What causes someone to think of you as opposed to one of your competitors?
Well, the secret sauce in my situation is the ability to bring together public investment from the U.S. government with private investors in the community, so that all critical private-public partnership, particularly when it comes to hard dollars on infrastructure projects. I know the strengths of both sides, and my unique market dominating position is I have the confidence of both sides to be able to bring them together on projects, and these are very large public infrastructure projects that that need investment from both sides, but often they can't see each other on the highway because they're going too fast in different directions.
So to do so, if we put, I'm sure that there's others that you do that's out there. If we were to line up you and say 5 others, so we got a half a dozen people out there, would they say something similar to what you said? And if so, then everyone sort of is on an even playing field, as you will. So the key is presenting it in a way that will expound logically that are the top dog of the field of that half a dozen. So the question would be then, how do you differentiate yourself above all the others that do what you do, and to so that when people are looking at a group of people like you, that you are the one that will emerge, that will shine the brightest. So take a look at what you're presenting today and figure out what might put you head and shoulders over someone. Go ahead,
well,
Alan.
probably in that case, Sarah, would just have to be longevity and understanding how to read a critical document called NOFOs, Notice of Funding Opportunities, which is what every government agency puts out when they're seeking bids on projects. I can speak NOFO like a second language, and I can understand and interpret very quickly.
Yeah, so if that's a differentiator, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand what the document's seeking. You're probably familiar, being in government work, that can be 45 pages of gobbledygook. I can get to the 3 critical paragraphs and interpret that so that the funding, the private and the public side, can see each other through the fog, and do that really quickly. I think the most important thing is I do it confidentially. I have so many municipal clients that I don't want to trip up one client to get in the way of the other. I'm going to treat each one basically in that cone of silence and make sure that their best interests are being advocated for. So that's my reputation, is that I keep all of those NOFO discussions confidential, and that's why they keep asking for me again and again and again to help seek out these opportunities. And it's especially critical now with the COVID financing. There's billions and billions of funding that's going to be drafted in these NOFOs, these mysterious documents, and I just know how to drill through. I know how to drill through them and get the salient points up front, and get right to the point. Get projects funded.
Okay. So the key, and we're going to get one more on the market dominating position, but the key point I think is figuring out, would anyone else in your field also claim confidentiality? So would they also claim they can get to the specifics of all of that?
All of my peers work for municipalities, and they're careerists, and they're going to be looking out for their employer, whatever the municipality is, whereas I'm more of a free agent, and I understand what all the needs are, just not one funnel. So and that takes a decade now of understanding the customer, which is the taxpayers in all different municipal settings, and what the needs are. So that would take, it would take a competitor. Well, it would take a competitor of mine 5 years just to understand the character of the area, and where I have the advantage of a decade of experience and trust and confidence.
Excellent. So the way to step out of yourself, look at yourself from an outsider's view, and what else could you put in there as a results-oriented, driving on solutions to bolster it even higher, your market dominating position now. Let's go on to the next one. We have one more time for one more on a market dominating position question.
We have Lara Nelson up next.
Hi, and thank you. I believe that my differentiators are actually that I am certified as coach, Scrum Master, and a project manager. So I can come into a company and drill down into the legacy strategies, if you will, and try to move people forward into the Agile framework, if indeed that is the direction the company is taking. I'm industry agnostic. I work well with geographically dispersed teams because I also have cultural sensitivity. I've studied 7 languages. Language is very important to me, as is culture. And that helps me actually also review RFIs, RFPs, and contracts. And I've also worked on both the vendor side and the client side. So I can, when working for a client, I can point out areas where the vendor might be potentially pulling the wool over someone's eyes. And I also have, although it's expired, a DoD security clearance. So I have a number of things that I view as differentiators for myself that many people in my field may not have.
Moving it up from a differentiator to a market dominating position, so I would, there's a lot of Scrum Masters, Scrum coaches, Agile coaches out there, but part of your market dominating position you speak multiple languages, you've held a security clearance, so that sort of puts a little validity in your background, and so all of those specific items is those market dominating position elements that I'm speaking of. So from, again, like I mentioned to Alan, I pitch it back to you as we move forward to the next slide, is that the concept is pick those items that the normal Agile coach, Scrum Master wouldn't have, multiple languages, a former security clearance, and any of those other elements that you have that other people may not have. That's your market dominating position. Certifications as an Agile coach, Scrum Master, all of those, there's a lot of people out there. However, what the differentiation is that it's those languages and stuff. So again, as I mentioned to Alan, I mentioned it to you also, take a step outside of yourself and say, if someone was to compare me with someone else that does what we do, then why would they want to consider me as opposed to them? What would put me above them that would be cause the client or the customer to choose me as their coach as opposed to this other person? But so thank you so much for pushing that out, because these types of examples really does exude how to take it to the next level, if you will. Mainly looking outside of yourself, looking in, and determining what is those elements that really put you head and shoulders above others that are in your field. So let's move into the ideal client and customer. So a lot of people don't have a clear understanding of who their actual ideal client or customer is. Now, ideal client, the nirvana, if you will, is your perfect customer. It doesn't mean that one wouldn't take a different customer. As an example, take like myself, ideal client, because I am a veteran, so my ideal nirvana of clients would be a veteran-owned, service-disabled small business that has somewhere between 15 to 25 to 30 employees, that is grossing revenue somewhere between $10 to $20 million, that is undergoing some level of growth pain, be it in personnel and processes. Those are my areas of expertise. Although the other areas that I have colleagues that work in is technology and finances and physical infrastructure. These are the 5 components that involve change. That is, you can change these areas. So people, process, technology, finances, and physical infrastructure. My area of expertise is in people and processes. So that's my nirvana of clients. But thinking it beyond that, I like clients who are startups that are, just beginning, that just establishing their companies, or small businesses that are going along pretty well, but there is some level of growth pain, and we're going to get into the pain here in a second, but they are undergoing some level of pain. It could be, we'll determine what it might be through assessments. That's how I work. Or it could be more of an established company that has grown to fall into my nirvana of clients. Doesn't necessarily have to be veteran-owned, but that's my perfect person, perfect company, because that's what I am, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So if I have an existing company that has some type of growth pain, then they are good clients of mine, and I can identify them very readily by those definitions. So the more clarity that you have, I have a friend of mine who owns a lawn and garden type landscaping business. He actually has gone so far to actually name his ideal client, and Susan is I'm not sure how he gets the name Susan, but his ideal client is Susan. I worked with a Peruvian lady who owned a hair salon, and she wanted to introduce a line of vitamins into that, and I was talking to her about her ideal clients, and of course she's Peruvian, so I'm thinking Hispanic probably, but she surprised me. She actually lives in Florida, but she's Peruvian by culture and birth and raising and stuff like that. But her ideal client was actually a white or black female, divorced, that is trying to get back into sort of circulation, if you will, the relationship building, and they wanted to redefine themselves. And so that was her nirvana of clients. And so she could, and they were actually between 45 and 50 years old at that too, because I remember she was doing this. It was about 8 years ago. So she actually had a very clear, crisp idea of who her ideal client was. So if we were sitting at a cafe, she could say, well, there's a potential really good client of mine. There's another one. There's a possibility. Well, all we don't know is if they're divorced or not. We can go with the ring on the finger, why not? But that doesn't necessarily guarantee that someone is single now. So anyway, that was her nirvana of ideal clients and customers. So from that perspective, let's open up the gates again to another 3 or 4 people to define or to describe who your ideal client is and how clear you get to doing it There's a saying that goes, with specificity comes success. So the more specific you are, in this case, of who your ideal client is, the greater you will be successful in actually identifying them. So let's open up the gates and hear some about the ideal clients that you describe.
Matthew Green says it's companies whose business are being digitally disrupted.
So how do you identify that particular type of customer? How would we know if they're being digitally disrupted? And what size are they? What type of industries are they?
Says he would be happy to come off mute. So let's get him unmuted so he can chime in.
Mm-hmm. Super.
Matthew, you
Hi, can you all
speak.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
We can.
Okay, so I'm also an agile coach, similar to the lady that spoke in the last round. And so when you talk about that ideal customer for me, it's somebody that has a commitment to change rather than this following a fad, that is getting, who we know their business is getting digitally disrupted, and that they have to change to survive. And so what I'm looking for is really more a level of commitment to be willing to change at a leadership level that allows me to make space for the people who are actually doing the work to have the time to learn how to work in a different way, where I can then help the people learn that we're not trying to compete with changing habits and delivering on a project timeline, because those usually collide. And
okay.
I usually...
So the question I would have back, and this is historical.
Yep.
I want to give one other person an opportunity also, is how do you describe, what type of industry is most likely to be disrupted? How would you identify that if we were just walking down a line of businesses, you say, well, that one is good, that one's not, this one is, that one is, that one's not. So think about how you can even get a greater level of specificity, that if you're walking down in the path of businesses, that you could very easily identify who they are. Otherwise, you're just sort of shooting in the dark as to who might or who might not utilize your resources, your expertise, if you will. So again, ask those very specific questions of yourself. Again, being outside looking in, as to how you might identify those specific companies that you could say, hey, this one definitely is being disruptive and needs my services. And you'll go in there and they'll say, Mike, you were like, they'll be awed because you came in there, first off, and two, they'll be awed because you knew that they were being disrupted. And you're not really having to sell your service because they already have that pain point. So let's go to the next one. We have one more.
Mentioned earlier she was an M&A consultant. She notes that companies who are serial mergers and acquisitions acquirers in middle market companies or divisions of large cap companies.
Yeah, it's interesting. That actually caught my eye. I saw it pop up on the screen, M&A. I wrote a paper on mergers and acquisitions from a psychotherapy perspective, a stage theorist, if you will, that companies go from step to step to step to 4 potential outcomes. Either the nirvana of a simulation, they've created something together that's better than they could individually, or they say on the other end is that, yeah, you own us, but we're going to keep all of our people, all of our processes, all of our technology, and we're just going to give you your money. So that caught my eye on that. I find that was very intriguing. So thinking about mergers and acquisitions, who might be your ideal client would be potentially, of course, those that are being bought or acquired, but who might be doing that? I like working with the merger and acquisition lawyers because they're already coming together to do a merger and acquisition legally. In my mind, that's sort of that's the easy part, because all you got to get is the parties to agree they shake their hand, sign the paper, and it's done. The hard part now is to actually bring two differentiating cultures together so that they create a new organization that is better together than they were separately. So what are some of your ideal attributes for a company?
Lois notes that she does integrations and not the legal piece of M&As. Lois, would you like to come off mute?
Mm-hmm. So Lois, as you're coming off of, yeah, I don't do the legal aspect either. I do the integration aspect of it. But the nicety about teaming with individuals that do the legal aspect is you sort of already have clients ready-made. The concept then is an ideal client in this case would be someone who has come to a M&A lawyer for that type of activity, a merger acquisition activity. And now you are now an enabler that helps the integration aspect of it be more effective and efficient. And by partnering with a legal firm that does it, then that's another feather in their cap. Say, hey, we can not only do the legal, but we have teamed with a company, in this case you, Lois, that can help integrate your two cultures together post the legal aspect of it.
Lois says she is unable to come off of.
Are we having?
She says she teams with CIOs and.
No worries.
So we will go ahead and move ahead, Simmie.
Yeah, we'll move forward. So the key is identify specifically how would you know a company is in a merger acquisition activity, and the more specific, as I mentioned earlier, the more specific to be terrific, I think, is as the actual saying goes. But the more specific you can be in identifying the ideal client that you have, then the easier it is to be able to identify them, then the more effective you will be, because they'll actually be seeking out your services. And that goes along with having that great market dominated position also. So let's go on to the next slide as we wind down our time together. The key is understanding the client's world. So the client, your ideal client, has some pain that they don't want. And you have a solution that they want but don't yet have. So the key is when you developing your market dominating position, and then you're identifying your ideal client, is then stepping into their world and having a clear understanding of the pain that they have that they do not want. As Lois was talking about, mergers and acquisition, they don't, their goal is usually in a merger acquisition, unless it's a hostile one, I suppose, but their goal is to create together a better organization than they could be doing separately. So the pain is they have now two separate cultures that now has to be integrated and blended together. They have to differentiate. So what type of duplicative positions do we have? We don't necessarily want people to get laid off. That would be a public that wouldn't be a good thing. I can't think of the word I'm looking at, but PR shambles, public relations. But so they want to work together. They would prefer not to let anyone go, but let's say we have to retrain them or repurpose the individuals. What type of processes do we have to help us work together? That's another potential pain point in merger acquisition. We have technology, so computer systems, servers. Are we working in the cloud? Not. So there's a lot of different pain points given, say, in mergers acquisition, as well as any other type of ideal client once you get into their world to understand. I use the word when I'm describing the pain points that I have as growth pains. So growth pains can be from a startup, a small business that exists, or even a larger business that are undergoing some level of growth pains. The startup, they're just trying to define what their market dominating position is, who their ideal client is, what are the pains that their ideal clients have that they don't want. maybe even determining types of products and services, your solutions, as I call them, that you're going to provide. It could be that someone could be a plumber that is just starting up their company, and they're a really good plumber, but they have no idea about business. So that's their pain point. That can go on with the existing small businesses or the small to medium-sized existing businesses. There is some level of pain growth going on. In my world, when I'm working with my ideal client, is that they have growth pains because their processes that they use to manage their people, to do billing or whatnot, is just not sufficient anymore. And we find all of that out through assessments. But every organization and person has some level of pain that they don't want, and they're looking for us as business owners to provide them with a solution that alleviates that. And the key with the pain points is that they will not move, they will not hire you if their pain point of staying is less than the pain of where they say they would like to go. That's the thing about change management. It's a physics problem. It's the equal thermodynamics concept is that if the pain is really great now and it's less pain for where you'd like to take them, where they'd like to go, then they will move in that direction. But if the pain of changing is so much greater than staying, then they're going to stay with where they're at. Their pain points is not great enough yet. So again, when you're identifying your ideal client, is having an understanding of their pain that they have they don't want, and when will that pain be at such a great level that they will hire you immediately to help them get to where they want to be. So that's really the key thing is understanding the pain that the ideal client has that they don't want, and you're going to provide a solution that they want but do not have. And you develop that through understanding specifically about who your ideal client is, and those ideal clients will hire you in the right position. And sort of build it on up. I'd like to go ahead and move forward. Your time, you'll get an offer. We can do a free consultation at the end. But the secret ingredient is action planning. No matter what we're talking about, if you do not create an action plan, the next slide, please. If you don't set effective action plan, and that's really goal setting, you're not going to achieve anything that we've been talking about today. If you'd like to develop your market dominating position, you have to set a plan up, a goal to help instantiate that further. Same way with developing your ideal client. Same thing as understanding the pain they have, going after contracts. If you don't set a goal to actually work your company day in, day out, you're not going to achieve the results that you want. And that comes into your goal setting. So these are SMART goals, and we'll go into the next slide. And SMART goals comes into this specific arena, and it's an acronym. Maybe some of you have heard it, but this is really the secret sauce of achieving results. Is making sure your goals are very specific. I mentioned earlier about they to be terrific, measurable, definitive performance metrics. How do you know when you have achieved a goal? How do you know when you are deviating from it, that you've now moved away from the actual goal that you're trying to achieve? And you do want to make it achievable, but you want to write down as to how you're going to achieve it. You can set a big goal and break those down into small objectives and work each of those objectives or maybe sub-objectives as you move forward. As I humorously say, I don't know why anyone would want to eat an elephant, but as everyone knows, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. How do you run a marathon? One step at a time. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is achievable. And it has to be relevant to what you want to achieve. You set the big goal. All of your sub-objectives, your objectives, sub-objectives have to be relevant to that big goal. And that big goal should be aligned to what you want to achieve as a business or a person. And time-bound, when do you want to achieve it? If you don't set a time period for that, then it's just going to be an ongoing activity and you're not going to achieve your goals. So make them SMART goals, if you will, please. So With that, let's move on to my next slide, if you will. And this is my offer, and this is to help you move forward. And next slide, please. So my contact information, simmie.adams@csp-lc.org. I think it's on the deck. It's on the invitations or whatnot. You can find me at simmieadams.com. You can find me on my website, which is www.csp-llc.org. I make this offer free. It's absolutely no cost. I'd love to just have an engagement with you, a 1-hour consultation just to learn more about you, your business, and some of the items that are going well and how did you achieve them, and what are some of the challenges that you're having, and what did you do to overcome them, and why didn't those activities work for you? So reach out to me. MBO has my contact information. You've got my information. I'm pretty easy. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me. It's real easy. And I would really like to hear from everyone that is live, as well as those that has registered that for whatever reason were not able to join us today, but they'll be getting a recording of this. So those people that are getting the recording, it's the same offer to you also. I just like listening to figure out how might I be able to help you achieve the objectives for which you are in business or you as an employee are trying to achieve. And you can be an entrepreneur both as an employee and as a business. Either way, you can work it as an entrepreneurship activity. So with that, next slide. I think it's going into questions. So we'll just open up the gates again for any questions as we get off the stage here today.
Dr. Adams, thank you so much for the informative presentation. This was wonderful and great content for anyone who is an independent business, whether they are just getting started or if they are engaged in actually running their business that they've had for quite some time. We all face challenges, and we can all use some updating of that market-dominating position. With that said, before we go into our Q&A, we are going to launch a couple of quick polls so we can get everyone the information that they need post-presentation. So with that said, first and foremost, you should be able to see our first poll, and it looks like we are about halfway voted. Would you like more information from Simmie so that you can schedule a consultation? And Simmie, we will get you your list of anyone who would like to schedule a consultation right after the webinar. All right.
And so on that, I'm easy to get up with, track me down. Even if you didn't vote yes, you decide no, not this time, but later on, just remember I'm here and I'm available. I'm easy to be found.
All right, wonderful. Great, so we will go into our next question here. Are you interested in learning more about MBO Advantage? MBO Advantage is our premier service offering for independent consultants who are looking to grow, scale, and optimize their business with a more curated experience. If you would like to learn more, you can request information here. Looks like we are just about fully voted, so we're going to close this poll down.
And I'll put a pitch in. I've been associated with MBO for quite some time, and it's a classic organization, and it itself is evolving and changing and growing. So there are a lot of opportunities to learn about how MBO partners can be an enabler and to help everybody grow their business.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Simmie. We're thrilled to hear the feedback. All right, for our next poll question, who would like to learn more about MBO Marketplace? This is where our large enterprise clients are able to post projects that they are looking to fill with our independent consultants. It is a matchmaking platform. If you are interested, we will gladly send you an invitation shortly after the webinar. And it looks like we are fully voted here, so we are going to close this one out. All right, we will throw up one more open-ended question here so that everyone can chime in and tell us what is their biggest challenge right now with their business that they are looking to overcome so we can continue to produce relative content for you. And while everyone chimes in, Simmie, we'll go ahead and run through a couple of questions that we have. There are some that we will not have a chance to get to due to time restrictions, and we will connect you via email for those questions after the webinar. So we'll dive right in here. First and foremost, we had one of our users ask, where did you get your coaching certifications?
So I'm certified through the International Federation, and I used was called Erickson Canadian School. It's all use Wex, like we got going on today. With the instructor, they're all certified at the professional level, and so most of them, or some of them, actually own business. They teach at the Erickson International Coaching College, I reckon I call it. So I was very pleased with it. It was about a 15-month journey from the time I started to the time I actually was certified, and they're recognized as a certified provider through the International Coaching Federation. And it's 5 modules, and it goes from teaching the basics to being to the expertise level. You go through 2 oral assessments, and then you take the written exam through the International Coaching Federation. So very pleased with how that all worked.
Great, Simmie. We appreciate the feedback on that. And we'll ask one more question before we shut this down. How has your personal market dominating position shifted and evolved over your career as an independent consultant?
Oh, how intriguing. I haven't been asked that question before. No, so, sometimes the hardest person to change is ourselves, from in all that we do. So I'm retired military, spent 22 years, and I claim doing this type of work for over 30 years because every time I was in a new assignment, my job was to improve the soldiers and the organization that I was in. So I think I definitely have evolved, when you're thinking about how you engage, they say at the lower enlisted level to seniors, it's different. When I was a young, I wouldn't have had, to talk to senior people, called senior executive people at 2 and 3. So that's equivalent to a 3-star general in the civilian realm in the government. So I think that it's the level of confidence that I've gained over the years of how I engage with people and providing the results that they desire. It's not results. And so that's how it's affected me personally.
Great, Simmie. Thank you so much for the feedback. With that said, it's 3 o'clock, so we will wind down our presentation. We appreciate all of our participants and registrants for joining us on the webinar today. And Simmie, thank you so much for all of the wonderful feedback. This has been a great session, and we look forward to
It was my pleasure.
We look forward to seeing everyone online soon. Stay safe and healthy.